Hai creato insieme a tua moglie Susannah la Movement Medicine, una forma moderna di sciamanesimo corporeo basato su movimenti, suoni e musica. Questa pratica nasce quindi dall'unione della creatività di un maschile e di un femminile. Quanto questo è stato importante nella nascita e nello sviluppo della Movement Medicine?
Wow, yes. I'm going to I'm going to use the terms yin and yang because what's really important about this is that yin and yang are the original creative relationship. They are the source through which all life came into being. The receptive, creative aspect of being, the active, directive aspect of being. And in our modern world, these are seriously out of balance. The the masculine and the feminine inside us, the yin and the yang inside us, are often at war. We live in a very apparently yang culture, but it's not really yang, it's a distortion of yang. And uh, it's what happens when the power of yin is not expressed or given space to. And for Susannah and myself, when we got together, we were in our early 20s. We got together at a particular time in the evolution of feminism and this rising of the feminine, of women's voices, to be strong, to break out of the shackles of a way of being that was destructive, in my belief, for women and for men and for the family. And so at that point in time, what what was considered important was the voice of the feminine, and the masculine became something rather shadowy and wrong and bad, and it was to blame for all of the problems that we have in our world. It's all just masculine, it's the patriarchy, it's this, that, and the other. And in nearly 40 years of being together, what we've discovered is that in order to really discover our human potential, our power, our capacity to take responsibility for our lives, our capacity to listen, really to listen to each other, to people who are different than us, to people who have a different view, to be fascinated, to be strong enough in our own backbone to receive, not just to tolerate diversity, but to celebrate it, to enjoy it. This really comes from a balance of yin and yang within us. It comes from the healing of not just the feminine, but the masculine too. If we look at the history over the past 3,000, 4,000 years, my generation was one of the first generations of men that, at least in my part of the world, didn't have to go to war. This is a whole new experience. The trauma in men from generations of war, of going off to fight a battle, maybe having no idea why, or without belief, without purpose, without safety, without a mobile phone to be able to tell your family that you're okay. And coming back home, like after the First World War, the people that came back home, the soldiers that came back home, were given no therapy, no counseling. It was just, welcome home, get back on with it. Yeah, you lost a leg, you lost an arm, you've been traumatized. Never mind, get back on with it. That's impossible for the human psyche. It's bound to create war in the home. And I'm not excusing bad behavior, but what in our relationship, all these things have arisen in the space between us. How my masculine energy was out of balance, and my feminine energy, my yin, my yang. Same with Susannah. And as we have grown up together into our 30s and 40s and 50s and now 60s, we have discovered that it's not about it's time for the feminine to lead. It's time for the masculine to sit back. It's really about time for yin and yang to be honored inside ourselves for what they are, to learn the value of being, of just being, sitting down sometimes, watching the world go by, not planning, not deciding, not acting, just receive, sit with your drum, listen to how the sound of your drum touches the nature around you, how nature starts to sing with you, to be receptive, to learn from life. This is, without that quality, our wisdom is brittle. It's only based in rationality. It's only based in what we know rather than what we don't know. So the yin is the welcoming of the unknown, the unseen. And the yang is the courage to travel across that landscape and to be present in it. And each human being, I'm going to quote Gabrielle Roth. She said, it's not interesting to me whether you're a man or a woman or you're gay or straight or whether you identify in this way or that way. What's really interesting about you is the particular dance of yin and yang that makes your soul dance. And the conscious relationship of these two creative forces within us is the birth of soul. It's the birth of creativity. It's the birth and rebirth and at times the destruction of life. So it's a total necessity for our human health to study these two apparent opposites inside us and between us and learn what they have to teach us. There is no limit to how deep yin goes. There is no limit to how high yang reaches. So wherever we are, we're always just beginning a new relationship with these two forces of life.
Quanto è stata importante la tua famiglia nel tuo percorso sciamanico?
I'm so glad you asked this question. Family, or at least a sense of family, is absolutely vital for human health and well-being. It's deeply tragic that for so many of us in the modern world, family has been a place where we have not been recognized, where who we are has not been welcomed. Quite the opposite. Sometimes we live in a pandemic of abuse in the family. So it's not surprising that family has become something that we want to get away from and to individuate and to live our own life and be an individual and make our own choices. It's not surprising that within a family system that has been so often so dysfunctional that so many humans today want to run away from this idea. But if we think about family as a community space where who we are is recognized, celebrated, guided at times, welcome, initiated through the different stages of life. If we think about family as a space where we know that we're going to be heard, and a space in which we are interested in our family members, like who they actually are, the mystery of this new baby born into the space between us. Who is this being? What do they need? What guidance do they need? Family it's a wealth that we have in so many ways poisoned, but that's not family itself. It's the ways in which we have been in family. And this nuclear family where parents are living in, isolation, where the idea that you have to bring up your child by yourself. It's so hard for parents in the modern world, and with all the challenges that we face. And again, I go back to indigenous communities that we're connected to. It's not that family is like just a joy. It's not. Families argue. Families have differences. But what is different in the communities that we get to visit is that that's just recognized as part of life. But family and our roles as a family in the community matter because it's like the building blocks from the individual to the relationship, to the family, to the community, the human community, to the land, to the trees, to the biosphere. Then we start to get a sense of what family actually means. And again, if we're not in touch with self, then it's very hard for us to be in touch with a sense of family as something positive and nurturing. And that's a tragedy for our modern world. But I want to say to people, it's not family. Family matters. It's the way that we are in family that we need to evolve, where the individual is honored alongside the needs of the community. And for me, in my own journey, the support of my wife, my son, my mother, my father died when I was young, but now these days, my father in spirit, it's there is no way I would manage to do even 10% of what I do in the world without that support. And so it's worth the healing that's necessary to mend and recreate the sense of family in which the individual is celebrated and the family as a whole is strengthened by the recognition of the individual.
Perché molti maestri, veri o presunti, non vogliono essere superati dai loro allievi?
One of my elders told me, nobody with power ever wants to give it up. And I was quite challenged by that phrase. I have to say, I was like, I'm not sure. But I notice even with my own son, who is a lot taller than me, a lot stronger than me, and no doubt will one day be wiser than me. There is within my own ego this feeling of my bright star starting to fade away. And so if I don't have an acceptance of my own mortality, if I'm fully identified as being the one, the shaman, the one who's always in that position, I'm going to really, really struggle when I see people starting to run faster than me and be more successful than me and be a better healer than me. But if I am doing my own work, my own internal work, to recognize the wisdom of the cycle of life, that strength rises and reaches a peak and then fades away and dies and then is born and starts again. And this is the cycle of life. If I'm doing my work to recognize the grief of loss, I'm going to be 60 in a month. I'm recognizing the limitations of my life. I've no doubt lived longer than I'm going to live. I can see my mortality. It gets closer every minute. And there is that sense of I'm going to have to let go of all that I love and care for. And that is a matter for the heart. So if I'm not in touch with my heart, if I don't have mentors, if I don't have mirrors, if I don't have people who can challenge me, then that situation, which is of course the purpose of teaching, that you want your students to surpass you. If certainly a shaman is interested in evolution, that means that things should be happening that have never happened before, that I didn't think of, that way surpass my own wisdom and understanding. If I have that understanding, then I have a chance of letting go with a little bit of grumpiness and upset and ego, but of not letting that be what guides my choices and actions. I can acknowledge that. It's important to acknowledge the truth. It's important not to paint it with some spiritual idea of, oh yes, I love my students to surpass me, and actually I'm contracting inside myself. That's nonsense, and it just leads to trouble. So if I can be honest and humble about the challenges of human development and mortality, then I have a much greater chance of actually celebrating the successes of my students, and not just celebrating them, but lifting them up.
Come si trasforma l'ego? È davvero possibile farlo?
Yeah, this is really, I think this is part of, I'm going to call it spiritual dogma, that somehow as we grow our consciousness, somehow our ego is going to disappear and we're going to become these saintly human beings and who who have no desires or needs and can just be totally open the whole time. And I think that's a terrible pressure to put on anyone. It's systemically dangerous. Nobody can really benefit from that. I'm not saying that in human existence there haven't been occasional human beings who have managed that, who actually do go to that place where their sense of ego virtually disappears. But for most of us ordinary human beings, the ego has a role. The ego is there to help us pay the bills and do the shopping and, have take care of the basic needs of a human being's existence. A strong ego is a really good thing. It's not a bad thing. The problem with the ego is when we identify as ego. I am that. Not having a place, that refuge, that sense of self that embraces ego, that embraces patterns. Susannah and myself, we're together nearly 40 years. Patterns that used to really upset us and hurt us and get us really upset with each other and angry and fighting. Now, at times, we have a sense of humor about them. We treat them as like dear known companions, like crazy people in our village with inside us who just need to be acknowledged. Oh, look, here's the part of Yakov that is absolutely determined that you, Susannah, don't look after me properly. And, that's so absurd when measured against the actual reality, but still it rises in me. And if I'm not able to notice it, acknowledge it, embrace it, and settle it down, then it will take over. So if I deny ego, ego will get stronger and stronger and stronger. And rather like poison in the body, it will eventually erupt in some form of expression that will be toxic for me and everyone else involved. So I love what Ramdas said about the ego. In the best sense, your ego is your style. The clothes you like to wear, it's your strange glasses that you have on. It's the, you know, how you make your house, like what you present to the world. It's like a car. Like there it is, this is what I like. And it's fine, like not to take it too seriously. But at the same time, we have to do the work where we are able to witness the patterns and stories of our own ego and embrace them. They're never going away. They're not leaving. They're going to be there till the moment we die. And the best we can do is be kind with them and clear with them, like not to let them dictate our sense of identity or our actions. And when they do, because they will, notice, learn, apologize. I with Susannah now, where if we have an argument, I I know that at some point I'm going to have to apologize. And I can either suffer for the next 4 hours or 4 days, or I could actually say, I need a little time out. I'm going for a walk, and then recognize what my part was in that conflict and come and apologize for it. That's the value of spiritual practice. It gives us consciousness, not to dissolve the ego for all time, but to see it and embrace it. And occasionally we are somewhere where the ego is so quiet, it seems as if it's dissolved. Like we're just in the experience of the mystery of life, which is not about me. It's this. But it's coming back. It's coming back. So learn to ride that horse with style and kindness and discipline.
Come si riesce a mantenere la purezza degli insegnamenti quando si deve sottostare anche alle leggi della materia e del mercato per diffondere il proprio lavoro?
They're separate things. So the world of survival and making a living and paying the mortgage and being able to look after ourselves, this requires a certain kind of approach to life, which is just practical. Like, what do I need in order to go on giving in my best condition? Like, I need a weekend off. I need some time each year where I'm not in front of anyone, just in front of the sunset every day for a week. These basic needs of self-care. Self-care is utterly fundamental to anyone doing work which is about engaging with the suffering of the world. Joan Halifax told us recently that if you are facing the world and being with the world and the world's suffering, you need to develop the capacity for your spine to be strong and full, bubbling with joy. And you sit and you face the world with that spine bubbling with joy. And then you're with the people and the situations of life. So I think in the spiritual world, there's often this idea that money is not spiritual. If you're doing something spiritual, you shouldn't be paid for it. That would be wonderful if we lived in communities where the healers were brought food every day, where their house was provided, which indigenous communities, sometimes the healer is given that support by the community. The way that we do that is simply through a system called money. Money is neutral. It's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just a form of transaction. So in order to keep the teachings that we work with clean, we have to recognize that money and taking care of business is one side. You could call it the tonal world if you're following that Toltec name, which is a very useful naming. The tonal world is the everyday world of taking care of business, function, health, body, enough clothing, enough food, enough sleep, enough rest, enough exercise, enough therapy, enough whatever it is you need to be at your best. And then there's the Nagwal world, the world of where that work exists. And that's not really touchable unless you try to bring them totally together. It's the work in itself is just the work. It's like a dream. It's a mesa. It's a space in which something can happen. And as long as there's two things that I think really matter. One is, as I said before, fundamentals of self-care for anyone doing anything caring in the world. It matters. It really matters. And for that, in our world, in our current system, you need what you need. You need to have a simple everyday, as least complicated as possible with money and business and marketing. It's like, what are you doing? Are you doing it because you want to be a superhero? Okay, you're going to get into trouble. Are you doing it because you know the value of this medicine and you would like as many people as possible to benefit from it? That's a different intention. So in the end, it comes down to what's the core intention? And if my self-care becomes more important or overwhelms the guiding intention, which is to share this medicine, I'm going to get myself into trouble. And I will give in to this very sad human disease of greed. It's inevitable. If I forget, if I stop doing my own work, if I stop going back to nature and sitting on the hill and fasting and praying and remembering and going to see my mentor and speaking to my elders, all of these things, if I forget that, then for sure the essence of our work will be corrupted. And thank God, Susannah and I have each other. We have really good elders in our life, and we know what we're committed to. And we're super grateful for the blessings and the bounty that our work has given us. And we try to live with that awareness of gratitude. Gratitude it's the key to greed. It's the medicine for greed. Greed comes from not tasting our food, from not recognizing our blessing, from giving in to that hungry ghost within us. So it's about recognizing for each individual, what is it you need in order to be able to continue to give at your best? I need a massage once a month. I need, cranial osteopathy to look after the rigors of travel and work. These things, that costs money. Therefore, I earn a living to take care of that.
Come hai vissuto il periodo della pandemia? Credi che l'essere umano abbia imparato qualcosa o ti sembra che sia tornato tutto come prima, ossia frenetico e compulsivo?
I'm absolutely sure that human beings learned a lot in that time, but whether we're going to integrate those learnings into the choices that we are making, I would say, we say in English, the jury is out. It's not decided yet. It looks like we're moving faster and faster towards some kind of a brick wall, and looks like we're not learning the lessons in general. But there is also a massive awakening happening in our species, and the pandemic was part of that. People recognizing the value of home, of family, of friends, of being able to stay safe, the value of not being always in a traffic jam. We did learn the cleaner skies when nobody was traveling or hardly anyone was traveling. We all noticed that. I believe that's a little bit like one of those plant ceremonies. We had a vision. Whether we will integrate that vision really depends on the choices that every single one of us makes. And are we going to? I loved it that you used the word compulsive. Are we going to give in to those compulsions and those addictions and run ourselves into the ground and destroy our natural world? Or are we going to learn? I have a great deal of faith in us human beings. I know we're capable of enormous cruelty and stupidity and unconsciousness, but I also know that we are capable of the complete opposite, of extraordinary kindness and generosity and creativity. And I believe that there's enough people now starting to see the challenges and the problems and the suicidal tendency of our way of living right now, that change is happening. And often we can't see change. Often it's invisible to us. We just see the momentum of the current dream. We don't see, a bit like in the winter, we don't see what the tree is dreaming of. We don't see those blossoms, but the tree does. It feels them in its roots. It's nourishing them. And I believe that as a species, we're doing the same. We are nourishing this dream of a more just world, of a world in which all species can live and all humans and nations could live with an awareness of each other, of the validity of all these different stories, these different ways of praising life, that we have it within us on this earth to make that dream come true, whether we will or not. I doubt I'll be here to find out, not here, but I hope I get to watch, and I'll be a supporter on the sidelines, and if I can get myself back here to continue, I will, because I believe in our potential, that dream of justice and fulfillment and sustainability for all of us is alive and well on this earth. And we might just surprise ourselves.